Whenever I post an Ask GHAST, I get a ton of really fun and interesting questions, both related and unrelated to Fire Emblem and games. But there is one question that gets asked that has inspired me to critically analyze for the best answer possible. What Fire Emblem world would you want to live in? As a meme, I answer with Japan because of Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I can just enjoy my life like normal, unbeknownst to the magical dream world or whatever. I never actually played the game, so I don't even know what the story is. I'd have health insurance. Okay, that's a maybe. I still don't have health insurance for myself yet, so I guess I'd have to sort that out. While I will omit Japan from this conversation, I also want to change the question. What if it wasn't just about what Fire Emblem world would you want to live in, but instead, what if you were transported to a Fire Emblem world? This question has the very important implication that you knowingly have been teleported, perhaps through no will of your own. You, a now accidental realm traveler, have unfathomable yet real information that another world exists, separate from the one you were sent from. You speak differently, you dress differently. Where you're from, you can't tank literal steam-powered 4-foot wide axes right into your sternum and face. How do you adjust? What is the situation going on around you? Who can you speak to? How likely are they to believe a word you say? And finally, which world can actually get you back home to Earth? Let's go over my personal most hell no worlds to be transported to and why, and then slowly get to the ones that I think are actual viable options. Low on the list is Thracia, because holy cow, no thanks. You're warped right into a country being completely ripped to shreds by a civil war. You are probably going to try to hide in one of these villages and can only probably helplessly wait for the Thracian Liberation Army to arrive, and depending on your age, you might just be kidnapped to resurrect Loptus. You could join the army, and depending on your background, can contribute. Thing is, in Thracia 776, the enemies are uniquely not that strong, it's just all the other shit you have to worry about. Maybe Nana will miss healing you, maybe you'll get berserked, maybe you'll get turned to stone. The possibilities are endless in this chaotic, war-torn land. And say you explain your situation to Leaf. What is he supposed to do about this? Nobody on Leaf's side could possibly help you deal with the bizarre inter-realm phenomenon you found yourself in. Nearly every dragon ancestor is dead except for Naga basically. You gotta deal with a war and then a rebuild. I don't think Thracia will have that much time for you. And honestly, that goes for FE4 too. You definitely do not want to be hanging around with Sigurd when this happens. The only saving grace with Thracia is that I would absolutely try to marry Abel. And in that respect, I'm ready for anything. So Yggdrasil is off the table, 2 games down. What about Archanea? We're in a much better situation than in Yggdrasil to be sure. The one advantage Archanea has over Yggdrasil is the likelihood of you being kidnapped is probably lower, and this is an army that includes the likes of Samto, a character who is literally here because everyone thought he was Navarre, meaning if he can fight and live, you can too. Assuming you have no real-world combat experience, especially one that has to do with swords and medieval shit. I think you're out of luck trying to find your way back home though. The Binding Shield can't warp you back to your world. Anyway, I'd wager the biggest worry you have is not getting taken and mind-controlled by Garnef. You being an alien could pique his interest. Honestly, being stuck in Archanea wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but there are better and worse options out there. Let's keep going. Valentia? Not a chance. Absolutely not. And this goes for Magvel as well. I'm going to take a hard pass in a world littered with monsters. Your best chance is joining the Lord's army. The saving grace here is that monsters perish after the world gets back into an equilibrium. But what's left is a real torn up continent, and we'll also see Grotto get wrecked for Magvel. There are better choices, and I'm saying this regrettably. I am sorry, Garrick. What about Tellius? All things considered, Tellius wouldn't be that bad of a place to live. First of all, I would do everything I could to be Nyla's second retainer in case, something terrible happened to Raphael. You might have something unique to contribute in terms to social issues going on here. Since you're from Earth, you could provide a more nuanced and refreshing perspective on race. Unless you're the equivalent of Shinon, in which case, buzz off, I guess. The positive side to Tellius is that there are some remote countries that are usually neutral and relatively peaceful. Unfortunately, unless you can turn into a dragon, you're probably not allowed inside, which is yet another reason to go visit Hatari. Can the goddess help you get back to your world though? Sadly, I think she's too preoccupied doing goddess world fixing things, at your expense probably. Narrowing it down further, we have Elib, which honestly is a strong choice. This mainly feudal continent does have its perks. For one, if we're talking Blazing Sword, we're mostly doing some covert stuff, not continent-wide wars. So that's a plus. You are dealing with creepy morphs though. But imagine being part of the Elib trifecta to become a quartet. Who knows? Maybe I'd get a paired ending with Lyn. Or someone could write a support science about me. Athos might be helpful to get me back to my world. Maybe he can do some funky stuff with the Dragon's Gate. I don't know. Probably not. But the positive here is that at least it's a gate to another world. So the trail is getting warmer. FE6 could possibly be a better time to be alive, although the enemies are way stronger in this game. Counterpoint to that though, a 15-year-old is leading the charge, so maybe they're not that hard to deal with. The Dragon's Gate is still an option to explore, but Athos isn't here to be a very distant hope for you. Now you just have dumb old Zephiel. Good luck with that. We're closing up on our options. Next, let's talk about Fate's Landia. Honestly, yes. There is quite a possibility that you could exist in Fates, which is cringe, but you have a way to return to Earth, which is based. I would seek out Selena, Laszlo, and Owain, get on board with their realm-jumping shenanigans, and see if Anankos, while he is sober, can get you back on track. Realm visiting is a thing that already happens here anyway, not only with the baby realms, but visiting Elise, Tellius, and so on. I don't know how you would do it, but there is universe-jumping nonsense everywhere in this game. In fairness to Fates as a staying experience, while yes, those ghostly Valite fucks can be creepy, and nor is not it at all, Hoshido would be a pretty alright place to live in. Keep me on the east side of this unnamed Fire Emblem world. On the topic of 3DS, let's visit Archanea 1,000 years or something into the future and be transported into Elise. A big con here is that the Risen are not very cool, but you can pair up with friends, which makes you nigh invincible on the battlefield, in time. And you can have kids here that appear from another world, which, while that means they will grow up in a post-apocalyptic timeline, you get to do it. You coming from the future is a completely believable thing here. Timelines and alternate universes are a literal plot point. Lucina would believe you pretty quickly, I'd bet. And Naga, when you get to talk to her, would probably be pretty floored as to how you ended up here without her knowing. But I'm betting my gold that she'd eventually get me back to Earth after vanquishing Grima for good. Finally, Fodlan. Now this is quite an adventure. Being a student at Garreg Mach sounds pretty fun, although I'd feel a little bit out of place in the pre-time skip. I guess I'd just be friends with Balthus and Mercedes, which honestly sounds pretty alright. Rhea is probably suspicious of me, but I'm not pale enough to be considered a spy from those who slither in the dark or something. I think I can have a fun romp being a student here. In the interest of self-preservation though, if I had to lay low, I'd probably join the Black Eagles with the ulterior motive to become a Silver Snow regular, or distract Byleth enough so when Edelgard decides to go to the Empire, Byleth isn't there to make that choice. Because there's no way I'm enjoying my stay here if Rhea, who realistically would be my only option to get back to Earth because let's face it, I would not be shocked that the church has some wacky secrets about jumping realms, is gone or dead. If going backwards in time is possible, then I'd wager anything is possible. Alright, now that that's settled, here is my list, from best to worst generally, about Fire Emblem worlds to be transported to. At the bottom I have Yggdrasil, Magvel, and Valentia. Then Archanea, then Tellius, then Elib, then Fate's Landia, then Fodlan, and finally, in my opinion, the best place to be transported to, with the hope of coming back to Earth, which is something that I would rather do than actually stay in this world, would be Elise. So now, whenever somebody asks in what world would I like to be transported to or where I'd like to live, I will drop a link to this video. Now of course, this is just my opinion. And I'm sure there are people who would love to just stay in these worlds if given the chance, and live out their fantasy of living in a romanticized anime sword and magic world. But I'd rather not live like that. If I cannot listen to hours of old school RuneScape soundtracks on loop on YouTube, then is life really worth living? But perhaps we have the same goal. If the mission was to return to Earth from one of these universes, which one would you pick and why? Are you choosing Elise, Fodlan, Fate's Landia? Or do you want to play on very hard mode and try your luck in Magvel? I know some of you can come up with ridiculously over-the-top plans that just might work, so let's hear it. That will do it for today's video. A quick one to be sure, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. Thank you to everyone who recently subscribed from the Javelins of Light video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, but you're watching this, please consider doing so. The channel is less than 500 subscribers away from 91,000. Each new subscriber contributes to the ultimate goal of 100,000 making Fire Emblem videos. If you'd like to support me and the channel, please take a look at the Patreon, and maybe you'll become a name displayed here. There's more videos to come. See you later. Deuces.
you.